Hi, this is Monica Packer from About Progress, and you're listening to The Messy Middle, a monthly series where I share some of my own messy middle so you can see what progress looks like for a real woman in real time. A big welcome to February. Let's start with the What's Happening segment, and this is where I just go back on the month prior and share what's been going on in the Packer household. I feel like it's quickest to say that January. I don't know why it feels like such an extremely long month, but it was definitely that way for us, and I'm sure for all of you. For me, it was very busy, and I felt like I couldn't catch my breath, but there's some good progress on that, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Starting with some other good things, I began my Read the Shelf challenge, which I am doing hand in hand with the Supporters Club. The first episode of each month on More Personal, I am sharing about how this challenge is going, and it's me just reading the books that I've had on my shelf, some of them for years. Also, some other good things that happened in January is I enrolled my toddler in swim lessons. We're trying to prepare for the summer ahead. I went skiing twice and I didn't break anything this time. Brad and I have been doing a good job prioritizing our date nights. My second oldest son found a new baseball team, which is really good. And it's kind of more of a mellow team, which I think is going to be a better fit for him. And I spent most of the month doing my small organization wins. Some of you joined me in on this informal challenge I've been running on Instagram, which I forgot to even celebrate 2 of the Saturdays of the month, but that's why I guess it was informal. And all we do is most days in January, we tried to just do one small organization project, and we called it a small organization win. And it's like a couple of minutes to 10 minutes in length at most for each thing. So it felt really good to make some progress in organizing some really needed areas of my home. But I do know in February, I have some big organization projects that I've been avoiding, like a linen closet, a basement closet, a furnace room, and underneath the bathroom vanity in Brad and I's bathroom. So those are coming up for us. Additionally, in January, we celebrated my 2-year-old's birthday. I cannot believe that he's 2. I made a giant cake that I shared with my whole big family. That was very delicious. It was like a graham cracker peanut butter cake. And then you were supposed to roll it in chocolate, but I couldn't without it falling apart. So it looked a lot more rustic than it was even supposed to, but it tasted good. And then some career stuff for me. I hosted the Do Something List workshop. It was so fun to gather as a community, and that's free for you. There's a replay, I think last week, and also the training is available for you, and I'll share more about that in a moment. Additionally, I got to go on a local TV show that I've been on a few times called Studio 5. And I both recorded and aired 2 of the top interviews of my career. More on that in just a minute. And as I'm recording this, yesterday was Monday, and it was our first day with a babysitter for my 2-year-old, which is a bittersweet thing. The young woman who is babysitting him actually babysat him already. She was his babysitter when he was between 3 and 6 months old, and then she left the state to serve a mission. And then she came back and needed some ways to fill her time before she heads back to college. So she's now going to be watching him 6 to 9 hours a week. And it feels both good, but challenging. It's been 6 to 7 months since I've had any childcare. And while we made it work in the ways that we could, it was also extremely hard on me. I recently shared a day in the life video, and I always hesitate to share those because I don't want it to come across as this is what your day should look like. Also, that particular day was extremely intense. So much happened. But most of my days have been looking like that. And a lot of people are like, that was exhausting to watch. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to make people feel exhausted or be like, wow, you do so much, but it's to share real life. And for me, my real life has been extremely packed, and it's time to really prioritize what I know needs to happen in our family. And my word of the year is calm for many reasons. And it's because I've just been stretched too thin for too long. So anyway, that's all to say, I know it's time. I know he's in good hands. I'm so fortunate I still get to be around. She's a great babysitter. He does not like her yet, even though he vaguely remembers her, we swear. But he will, and it will just take some time. And it's that time for our family. So good things are in the works, and I'm hoping for this next month to feel more manageable in terms of actually having some dedicated work time and not trying to squeeze it all in the cracks like I have been. And as part of that, one of the reasons why is I've taken on more clients, coaching clients this winter, and I'm already loving working with them. So it's all good things. And I'm also writing the book, which again, you'll hear about in a minute. I didn't mean to give so many teasers here, but I always like to end this segment by sharing some highs and lows. I think the highs here are those interviews. I got to air my interview with Catherine May, who is someone I have tried to get on the show for years. And I have to tell you, interviewing her was such a special experience. I keep using the word magical to describe the episode to people, but it truly was that kind of experience for me. She was so generous and lovely. And then the other thing was actually recording the interview with Sharon McMahon, and it's going to air on Monday. I was so nervous heading into it. I did everything I could to be prepared, from reading her book to having really good questions in advance to rehearsing it myself so I could just be calm and in the moment. And I will say I was more nervous than I was for other big interviews in the past, but I'm really proud of how it turned out, and I'm really eager for you to listen. Another high is kind of a funny one. My kids have been begging for a Nintendo Switch for years, and they finally talked me into it by agreeing to pay for, I think they paid for about 2/3 of it, at least half, with their own money that they had been saving. And then we had another caveat to getting the Switch. And it's like, we have rules that they only get to play on Saturday, and they each get a certain amount of time, which is very low, like 10 minutes each to start with. And then the additional time is based off of their piano practicing for the week. So what we personally have been doing is they have a little notepad and they just write down the minutes they practice each day. And we take the total number at the end of the week on Saturday, and then we divide it by 5, because that's how many days I would like them to practice a week. And so if they practice 6 days a week or even 7 days a week, they get extra time because we divide it by 5, and they get to add that to the already existing bank of 10 minutes. So they have been loving the system in terms of how they build up their time towards a Nintendo Switch, and hearing them laugh hysterically as they're playing together has been so fun. And they're doing a very good job of setting the timer and honoring the time for the most part. And anyway, it's been actually a great thing to introduce to our family. And I wanted to share that honestly because, anything screen related can be pretty tricky. And especially with video games, I think. And it's working for now for our little family. And I think it's a high for us until it maybe become a low. We'll see. And the low for January is just a lot of exhaustion, just physically, mentally, emotionally. That's why I feel like I know I'm ready to get more help. So hiring the sitter is one of the steps to that. I'm also working on hiring someone to co-edit the show with me, just doing finishing touches on things that take me about 1.5 to 2 hours more a week. And that 1.5 to 2 hours would help me be able to free up to other work or family. And then I'm maybe looking into house cleaners. I don't know yet. I think I'm going to hold off, but just based off of, the expenses for those other things. So those are the highs and lows and what's been happening in the Packer household. Let's do the next segment, the DSL update. The DSL stands for Do Something List. It's, for me, a yearly list that I make of ways to explore who I am all outside of goals and resolutions. And so many in our community love to do this too. We have a free training for you. It's all been updated. And it's at aboutprogress.com/DSL. It's never too late for you to make your own. You don't have to make it at the beginning of the year. And speaking of which, my DSL update is that I have yet to finalize mine. Even though I taught a full workshop and I have some brainstorms on what I want on my list, I haven't finalized it yet. And that's kind of the beauty of the Do Something list, is it doesn't have to be finalized by January 31st, let alone January 1st. And I guess I'm living that out and modeling it in some weird ways. I already know that it's going to be a lot about creativity and crafting and hobbies, and I'm already excited for it. And I have been leaning in some ways in terms of reading some physical books, which is also something on my goals list. But my Do Something list way of doing that is doing the Read the Shelf challenge, which has been feeling really good. So I will tell you, I'm planning on finalizing that this week, and I will update it on my new site which again, I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. I'm sorry, I keep teasing things, but that just belongs in a different segment. So look for that update where I share my personal do something list. And I do hope you join me in creating your own. So make sure you sign up for that free training, and then also email me what your DSL looks like. I'd love to give you feedback and celebrate the list that you've made for the year. That's it for the DSL update. The next segment is Make It a Habit. I'm proud to say that I was a January joiner hard this month and this year in ways that have been good, but also sticking. So I want to share some habits that are going well and some that are not going so well. Going well so far is the biggest goal I needed to start with, the most practical one too of the year, was the habit of going to bed earlier and waking up earlier. Now, I have been working on this realistically for years. Ever since I had my baby, it's been a roller coaster to gradually work up my bedtime to my wake up time. And ending the year, I was more venturing closer to like 5:45 and 6. And now I have been consistently waking up at 5:15 almost every day. Although, like an example, last night, my toddler, now toddler, was up he was up for a while, then I was up for hours after because I couldn't fall asleep. So sometimes things like that happen. But overall, I've been going to bed sooner, which is the most important part, and waking up earlier too. And that's feeling so, so good. Other things that are going well, the piano practice for my kids, I don't really have to nag them as much. And my 7-year-old is doing really great practicing on his own now. He's almost 7. He's turning 7 tomorrow. Anyway, so it's been nice to see that, he is to the point where he doesn't have to have me holding his hand and making him practice every day, that he's capable of doing it on his own and is catching on. Another habit that is going really well is a financial meeting that Brad and I are having each Sunday. We just are setting the timer literally for 15 minutes, and sometimes we do it shorter than that. And we're just going through the information that the financial advisor sent to us after the 2 meetings we did with her. And this was with Fearless Finance, by the way, who was a podcast sponsor. I paid for my second session, and I'm going to pay for a third one soon coming up. And the amount of information she gave us was both very helpful, but also overwhelming. So we are just going through one little part each Sunday together, and we're getting clarity on our goals. And we're also doing the practical sides of like opening up different accounts or consolidating other ones as we're preparing to start estate planning with her, which makes it sound like we have an estate. It's just basically a fancy way of saying, make sure our affairs are in order if something happens to us, including a will for our children. So, which for us will basically be like, who's going to take care of them? So that's been feeling really good. That's been something that has been weighing on my mind for quite some time. Another habit that is going well, I thought I had another one. It'll probably come back to me after I finish recording. So let's go into what's not going so well. I've had some ups and downs with 2 habits that have a common root of reading more. So I need to read more with my 7-year-old, and we worked on that a lot, but with the holiday break and then getting into the new year, and they're literally being like every minute is accounted for with my day, since I had to squeeze all my work into such small periods of time. I kind of fell off the bandwagon of reading with him after school. So that's really important, both for his reading, which he needs to work on, but also his speech, he has been working on with a speech therapist, one at school and one private. We've had to double up on things, and he's improved a ton. But the speech therapist at the school, I was like, hey, do you feel like we're almost to the point where we can slow down in the private speech therapy, because it's pretty pricey and I want ways to help pay for the other things that are coming up, like hiring a sitter. And she said, hold on for another month or 2, but the more you read and practice the speech with him as he's reading, the better. So that's really needs to be a priority. And then, which I've done so well with all my other kids, which makes me feel a little guilty. And he actually loves to read, but he doesn't read. He looks at a lot of pictures, books, and thinks he's reading. But he can read more than I think, but we need to do that better. And then the other part of that habit that's not going so well is reading for myself. And I said there were ups and downs. The first 2/3 of January, I was doing really well with this, thanks to my Read the Shelf challenge. But the last third of the month, it just there was so much to do in such limited time that my reading just was a lot shorter in length. So what I'm thinking of doing is, now that we're getting the childcare in, I'm hoping that my first grader, my almost 7-year-old, comes home from school an hour earlier than my other kids at 2:30. And so I'm thinking I can officially end my workday at 2 on the days that my sitter is around. So that's Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And on those days, I can read for a half an hour. And I think that will help with all the other little ways that I'm just putting the drops in the bucket of reading before bed or while I'm eating meals, or if there's some downtime for some reason after school or after dinner. And that's when I've been reading, but there just wasn't any of that downtime really the last third of the month. So anyway, ups and downs with that habit in particular, but I'm so glad that I can honestly share about some habits that are going well and not so well. Okay, the next segment is the book watch. The book watch is where I share what's going on with my writing of the book, which is one of the biggest goals of my life. I have to tell you that I am really proud of myself. This has been, like I said, a goal I've had like my entire life, but especially the past few years. In 2023, I thought I would write a book that year, and that was a terrible year to think I could write a book. 2024, I honored that it was still not that time, but 2025, it really is the time. And in sitting down every day and putting in my baseline of 15 minutes of writing, which usually has been more like an hour, it tends to be more like an hour. But even those baseline days of 15 minutes are paying off not only in me writing the book, like it's happening, but also in helping me feel like, see, Monica, you're doing it. You're doing it. Now I have to tell you, I already finished the preface and part 1. And part 1 was so meaty that I was looking at my word count, and then I predicted so if I have 8 parts on my outline. And so if I finish part 1 and it's already at this word count, and if I times that by 8, and then if I then see how many pages that word count would be in a book, it's like 480 pages is what it's estimating. So I'm like, oh, I am going to need to kill my darlings a lot. And the way I'm writing right now is kind of a mess. And that's the way I need to write so I can get it out. So I know a big part of actual writing will be to cut my darlings, kill my darlings, as Stephen King says, and to gradually condense and pare it down and make it like what actually is the most needed, helpful, informative, and even fun to read parts of the book. And by the way, the book is going to be on habits, and I already have a title, and I'll announce that, I'm sure, at some point in the future. And I'm already looking to an editor and a book designer and all those things too. So yeah, I'm very proud of myself, and I share that with you because maybe you have a goal that you have long had to push off or put on the back burner. Maybe you have some fears around it, but you still have the desire. And hopefully, me leaning into that season now can give you that kind of boost to do it yourself as well. That's it for the book. The next segment is what I'm loving lately. What I'm loving lately, let's start with some music. Bob Dylan. And this is absolutely because Brad and I went to see The Great Unknown. The Great Unknown, is that the, yeah, I think so, with Timothée Chalamet. I'm always like, I can put him in my pocket. Little Timothy. He was great in that movie, and so were everybody else except one character that I felt like gave the stink face the whole time, but everyone else was amazing. And it's just made me be like, wow, my parents listened to a lot of folk music and classic rock growing up, but I don't know much about Bob Dylan, and I didn't listen to a ton of him, although I recognize a lot of the music. So I'm just playing that music now around the house. And by the way, I do recommend the movie. It does have a lot of language, but that's about it, which, hey, that meets my standards, but I don't know about you. So make sure you check it out. Common Sense Media is a great place to check out. Like, there's one of the things that Brad and I do in January and February leading up to the Oscars is we watch the movies and we try to watch the top 10 nominations for the Best Picture and other movies that are part of the nominations. It's just one of our hobbies, things we like to do together. We don't watch all of them because not all of them are things that totally meet what we're comfortable with. Like, for example, this year, we probably won't be watching The Substance. Actually, I can say 99% sure we're not watching The Substance just based off of some of the graphic content and some like of the nudity and stuff like that I'm just not comfy with that. But anyway, Common Sense Media has been a great way for us to check out the movies in advance and see what we're comfortable with. So anyway, loved the movie, loving the music. Another thing I'm loving lately is I think they call them, if you pronounce it, Neway bras. It's spelled Newai. And they are like a wireless bra that's really comfortable. And I bought 3 versions of them to replace the nursing bras that I was still wearing, that I started wearing like before I had my baby over 2 years ago. And it was time. Those things were done, and they had been done for a long time. And it's never fun to get new bras, but I'm really liking them because they're not like A cup, B cup, C cup, although they do give measurement guides like that. They're like sizes, small, medium, large, extra large, but they're pretty darn comfortable, and I do recommend them so far. And the final thing I've been loving lately is the NYX Soft Matte Lip Creams. They're very affordable, like $6 to $9 each. I bought some years and years ago when my friend recommended them, and I kind of dug them out of my makeup drawer recently and was using the last dregs of what was left in them. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I should just buy more of these because the other things I like lip-wise are pretty expensive. So that's a great lip. There's some dramatic colors. There's some not dramatic colors. Today I'm wearing a dramatic color if you're watching this on YouTube. So the NYX Soft Matte Lip Creams are a go-to. That's it for what I'm loving lately. The next segment is On My Mind. What's on my mind? I mean, there's no way to say it except one word, and it's just politics. And I feel like that's all I really need to say, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. And I know we have that whole gamut on the podcast, and I do hope you know that I do my best to ensure that I have interviewees across the political spectrum. And truly, when I look at my archives, I see that reflective. And I always desire that diversity of thought and experience and political belief. But I think wherever you are, complicated times. It's complicated times. So that's just what I'm feeling. So again, just one word, politics. And another thing that's been on my mind is one of the goals I have this year is to explore new forms of spiritual seeking, to unearth old forms of spiritual seeking. I'm going to be recording an episode soon with Erin Moon, who wrote a book called I've Got Questions, about how to handle like when you're facing those times where you have big spiritual questions, or there's a lot of fear or confusion with those things. I've been an open book in the past with this, and that I've become like don't feel like sharing any of it. But I will say I just have gotten to this point where I'm like, you know what? I feel like just checking off boxes isn't serving what I want to be served with my spiritual relationship. So I'm trying to just open myself up. And that means, like I said, unearthing old practices of studying certain things and scriptures, but also means like reading more books on spirituality and, trying to lean into other things, like maybe exploring some meditation more and studying more, both like scripturally, I don't know the word, or other experts of those like inside and outside of my faith right now. But it just feels like that's what's on my mind. I'm ready to do that more. I'm ready to kind of lean in and be a spiritual seeker, which feels good. It feels good. That's it for On My Mind. The next segment is something I'm just retitling, but you've heard it for a while, and it's About Progress's Progress. In this segment, I'm going to give you a quick progress update on how About Progress is doing, both as a podcast and as a community and as a business. I guess those are 3 things. I always start with the supporter club update. Right now, we have 164 supporters. And I just have to say, more content. Content has been lots of fun to do, but also a ton of work. The deep dive episode that I released last week that has case studies that are very interesting, like Ruby Franke and Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. It was all about like, who do we trust in this murky waters of online expertise? Anyway, that episode alone was like a simpler deep dive than others, and it still took me about 15 hours to create. And that may not sound like a lot, but when it's around a 30 to 40 minute episode, I think I should kind of tell you, I put a lot of work into it. But anyways, I've loved it, but it is work. I aired lots of episode previews of More Personal on the main feed About Progress throughout January, so you can listen to those for samples, and some fun things are coming up for the supporters, including Ride or Die levels supporters. We're going to have a dream making workshop this spring. We're also going to be reading The Small and the Mighty together this fall, and some hikes that I'm going to be planning in the spring and the summer. So lots of fun things happening. Please join us in the Supporters Club by going to aboutprogress.com/support. In other news on the About Progress front, I updated my website. Finally, I have had two websites. Maybe you didn't know. One housed the podcast and the old blog, and another housed all my courses and all of my offerings, like my coaching offerings and the Supporters Club and anything I've done, course content, program content, anything like that has been on a different site. And you may know it as Work in Progress Academy. Is that what the site names? So it's taken us several years, but we transferred all the blog posts over. Eventually, we hired somebody to do the last, I think there were like 600 plus still posts that had to be transferred. I bought my own template and designed the site, and it looks so much better. And then we transferred the domain. Now, this is good because now the podcast and the blog and all of my offerings and the benefits of supporters, by the way, are all on one site, aboutprogress.com. And the bad news is that because I switched from WordPress to fully being housed on my business site, or I don't know what you call it, host, Kajabi, the bad news is that I have lost like all of my SEO. And if you know anything about the online business world, then you know that searchability is really important. And my searchability has been really high and really good for About Progress. And when you switch domains and you switch to new hosts, you basically lose all of that. So in many ways, it's going to be good and easier for the community and even for me too. In other ways, it could be bad for the business. So I'm really hoping I made the right choice there. Other updates and news. I am getting ready to open the doors for the Sticky Habit Intensive. It is going to be opening next week for the public. I only plan on hosting 2 intensives this year, and I may only host one. It depends on how the book writing and the publication goes. So stay tuned. But for now, we're opening up, and the final day to sign up is February 21st. So watch for that sign up soon. And I'm also planning on some affordable workshops coming. Things like us planning out our summers, planning out our falls. The dream making workshop, I'm going to open up to the general public, but if you're a Ride or Die member, you get it for free, and private too, a private version of it. So affordable workshops are coming up soon too. And I always like to end the segment by sharing a review of the month. And this review is from a reviewer named Kai Hosh. It's KYHOSCH, I believe. Yep. And this is what they wrote. Recovering perfectionist here, I found About Progress a few years ago when I was in a transitional time, moving into a new town where I didn't know anyone. Finding this podcast was like having a friend through a tough time, and I will forever be grateful to Monica for it. I loved hearing her perspectives and growing along with her as she interviews experts in their fields. I'm growing as a person, not just as a mom, and I am so thankful for this podcast. So Kai Hosh, make sure that you email me at hello@aboutprogress.com. Give me your full name and your address, and I will send you a little thank you gift. And by the way, if you haven't left a review for About Progress on Apple Podcasts, please do that. Once we get to my goal of 1,250 reviews, I have a fun gift I'm giving away of my favorite linen apron and some towels, and I'm pulling from any reviews left through all of 2024 leading up to whenever we hit that number within 2025. And we always do an annual giveaway each fall, so any reviews left in 2025 are automatically submitted to that giveaway too. So please do your service, I guess, to the podcast and do that. And I would actually add one more thing that's kind of new. Last year we started to make sure the podcast was on YouTube more, but it wasn't super video friendly, meaning it was a lot of audio, or it was more designed for just the audio listeners. But as we're working to grow About Progress, video is becoming increasingly important. So we are making every episode now available on YouTube. Before, it was just the main episode of the month, our Monday episodes, but now the Monday and Thursday episodes are all up from 2025 on, and we're doing our best to ensure that they are as visual friendly as they are audio friendly. And if you could do a solid, if you're a YouTuber fan or a YouTube fan, go follow us on there. And if you really like to watch things on YouTube and you prefer to even watch interviews, you can start watching there. Before we go, as a quick reminder, you can always support the show for free by listening, sharing, leaving reviews. Make sure you are subscribing and watching on YouTube, but also on any podcast platform, sharing. Again, anything like that helps the podcast so much. So thank you. And thank you for listening. I hope sharing my messy middle gives you the courage to lean into your own messy middle today.